question first will have 1 minute to rebut, and then the other candidate will have some time, maybe a half an hour, will be lenient in it in order to make a comment as well. And we have all agreed on those rules. Hensley Daniel of the Nevis Reformation Party will take the first question, and that is because of a coin toss. The questions then will be alternated so that Mr. Amory of the Concerned Citizens Movement will take the second question, and then we alternate thereafter. Our senior news producer, Almond Descent, is our timekeeper. Mr. Descent will indicate to the candidates when their time is up. After we've had the engagement between myself and the candidates, we will go to the lines where you, the caller, indeed we are going to allot most of the time for that, will be able to ask questions of the candidate. Those questions must be indeed, as it is stated, questions. We are asking that you do not preface your engagement by lengthy statements. We have enough time to, as we will usually request, organize your thoughts, put them on paper if necessary, so that when you get on the air, you can ask your specific, direct, and forceful question. As per usual, anything that we deem is not within our broadcast standards and of a personal attack nature, we will not entertain. I dare say, I'm very pleased to have said over the past years that we've been doing these programs, we have not had so much of that difficulty, and all credit to you, the listener. We will have this debate or discussion going for 90 minutes. Thereafter, if the candidates decide they will work a little overtime, we will accommodate that. This broadcast is being carried by the Press and Public Relations Department of the Nevis Island Administration, NNC Channel 8, to the courtesies of Caribbean Cable Communications, Cable TV. And we thank them very much for their cooperation in these ventures of assisting and getting the message across to you, the public. By the way, they will also be participating tomorrow evening and also on Monday evening after the polls. We'll also like to, by way of notification, inform you, the public, that tomorrow evening's special edition of Let's Talk will begin at 8:30 instead of 8, and it will also be televised. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Nevis Reformation Party and the Concerned Citizens Movement for accepting our invitation for being here this evening. Indeed, I would say that it is a sign of maturity on the political debate and discussion in this side of the Federation. Of course, as I said, we are focusing this evening on Nevis, and indeed, since it is a federation, I'm sure that everything will be intertwined. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Webbo, and thank you.
We, as we indicated, I think the coin toss was for the first question. And so I think what I will do, since Mr. Daniel is going to take the first question, Mr. Amory, you can go ahead first and make your opening comment.
Thank you very much, Webbo, and it's a real pleasure to be part of this political dialogue and social dialogue as well in this very august institution, in radio. And I want to greet all the people of Nevis and people of the Federation and the region and all those who are listening to us, and to say that tonight, as has been expressed, this discussion is in respect of the federal elections, which will be held on the 25th of October. And before I make any statements, I want to make a very special appeal to all the people of Nevis in all the constituencies to recognize that it is your constitutional right to vote. And it's a privilege which has been won for each one of us who are registered to vote and entitled to vote by persons who have toiled long and hard. Some people have shed their blood, have made sacrifices for this privilege. And in some countries of the world, people do not have this privilege. And I want to encourage every single citizen who is entitled to vote and registered to vote to go out and cast his or her ballot on the 25th. There are some persons who have said, why are the candidates of CCM participating in this election? And the simple reason is that this is a constitutional requirement. Nevis is part of the federal structure, and until the people of Nevis decide to vote using the constitution to be outside of the federal structure, it is a constitutional requirement, and it is meet and right and a responsibility of every person to participate, and therefore we are participating. In addition to that, were we not to participate in these elections and there were a void, then we could have a ridiculous situation of persons who may not be capable of representing Nevis being simply nominated. They may not even be persons who reside in Nevis, but who are citizens who may not even be registered to vote, but who could have been nominated were there that void, and then on the day of elections, or nomination, if there were no elections in terms of persons contesting the constituencies, we could have had a ridiculous situation. And therefore I think the people of Nevis and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis ought to recognize that and put to rest the matter of whether there is a doubt or whether people should vote or not vote in Nevis. In respect of the federal elections, the CCM party is fielding candidates whom we feel are capable of giving Nevis effective representation. We have experience in this area, and we feel that what is required at this time in the body politic is in fact capable representation, people of strong character, strong will, and people who will stand for the people whom they represent. In the federal structure, there is the need to discuss matters which are raised in the federal parliament, for which the federal parliament is responsible. Things like police, security, safety, matters of education, matters of health policies, education policies, matters to do with regional and international development, that is foreign policy, and relates to trade, globalization and trade liberalization, customs matters, and some tax matters, income, corporation taxes and so on, which are relevant to Nevis. And we need to be clear in our perspective in terms of who can in fact represent the views of the people of Nevis and the issues on those issues, and make sure that we get the kind of representation and policies which are important. There's also the issue of human resource development, an aspect of which falls under the federal administration. Although in recent times, Nevis has had to pick up the mantle of providing, in large measure, economic cost to the University of the West Indies. But those are some of the issues, and I believe that the candidates of CCM are capable, and we have the experience of representing, and that is why we are contesting this election.
Mr. Daniel, maximum of 5 minutes.
Good evening to the people of Nevis and St. Kitts and the wider region. I'm happy to be here as a member of the Nevis Reformation Party slate of candidates for the 2004 elections. I am persuaded that these elections present for us an opportunity to do some new things and to enter into a new approach with respect to the representation in the parliament in St. Kitts. I think for a long time it has been taken for granted. Our team of candidates, Miguel Mills, Patrice Nisbet, and myself, see the need for some particular things to be done. We, of course, are in these elections because we support constitutional reform, which ensures that much of the powers of administration be divulged to Nevis while maintaining the integrity of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. We also are in these elections because our platform involves electoral reform, where one aspect of which is the use of voter identification cards. Presently, if you go to register to vote, you don't need you need an ID. But when you go to vote, you don't need an ID. There's something anomalous about that situation. We also see the need for tax reform because there is a long list of nuisance taxes which we need to harmonize and make into a proper progressive tax system. Fourthly, we see the need for the establishment of a national health scheme where all the people of St. Kitts and Nevis are covered with contributions from themselves in much the same way as we do social security. The reason for this emerges because there are a number of people who are unable to provide health care for themselves on their own, given the cost of living and the cost of care, doing it individually. Also, we have had over the last year enormous concern about crime and safety. We think that it is time for new thinking for us to have a comprehensive crime policy which involves prevention, rehabilitation of offenders, upgrading of the police services in terms of their own training and also equipment. We also see the need for a more imaginative use of social security funds so that some measure of private sector involvement might be useful for us to create additional employment. Those are the matters on which we are campaigning. Our campaign is based on a platform of those matters because we believe that with our energy, time and effort, we can arrive at consensus with all the parties, because the difficulty of not doing this is that we will be here again 5 years later in another federal election, but the lives of the people, particularly as it relates to crime, health, taxation, electoral reform and constitutional reform, may not necessarily be held. So that is the basis on which we are campaigning. And we could also say that we are prepared, if elected, to actually go to the parliament and actually speak in the parliament and actually represent the concerns of the people in the parliament, because we take the people's business seriously, and even as we do so in opposition, we have prepared a green paper following the green paper on constitutional reform. So we are working outside of government, and we are asking the people of Nevis in the 3 constituencies to give us an opportunity to look, given our particular program. Thank you very much.
That was the candidate for the Nevis Reformation Party, Mr. Hensley Daniel. Now both candidates have made their opening comments, and now I will ask a few questions. The basis of these questions have been formulated from the talk shows and indeed engagements with the general public as they express their concerns and indeed have asked questions. Additionally, we had asked whether or not persons would like to have sent questions. 1 or 2 persons took the opportunity, and we'll see whether or not we cannot ask one or two of those questions. The first question, based on the coin toss, goes to Mr. Daniel of the Nevis Reformation Party. You have 2 minutes in which to answer, and then Mr. Amory will have the same question. You have 2 minutes in which to answer. Mr. Daniel, you will have 1 minute to rebut, and Mr. Amory will have 30 seconds in which to rebut. The first question. Mr. Daniel, you have just indicated that your party is, even out of opposition, preparing a green paper, which is an indication that your proposal is to change in some format the Constitution. Why then are you participating in the federal election?
If you're going to change the Constitution, constitutions are made, they evolve over time. They must, I like what Lloyd Best says about them. They're documents of founding and refounding. If 20 years after we recognize that there is some difficulty with the Constitution, we must certainly make an effort to make the necessary changes. The only way you can do that is to be in a parliament. I don't imagine we can change the parliament. I don't imagine we can change the parliament, change the Constitution without being in the parliament. So if we are interested in constitutional reform, by extension, we are interested in participating in the elections. The elections are held, the candidates are elected. You can sit down like adults, and as long as we can get the egos out of the way, that is part of the problem. The egos are getting in the way, and so we are not having the kind of changes. Because when I listen to the people on the ground, and I think I am very well trained to listen to people on the ground, that is what I hear. I hear that they want changes in the Constitution. St. Kitts looks after itself, Nevis looks after itself. And if you hear that, that is why you're taking part in the elections. You don't expect to change the Constitution by not being involved in the political process.
Mr. Amory, same question. Your party's taking part in the election. You, in your own way, by a different method, wants to change the Constitution. So why should you take part in the election?
I think I made a statement at the beginning that we are part of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and not to participate could create a serious hiatus, a problem in terms of who represents. I'll give this example. Let us assume that neither of the NRP nor CCM fielded candidates and did not nominate anybody. And then someone who felt, well, we need the 3 seats represented, nominated persons, and those persons were unopposed, but were not capable of representing the issues. We could have had a very serious problem. And we feel that we cannot make what has been considered a very difficult situation more difficult by not participating. But by participating, we believe that we are giving the people of Nevis an opportunity to be represented, and also to ensure that no matters which are relevant to the people of Nevis are discussed, made into law without our having a say in how that policy is made in the House of Assembly. We may or may not be able to influence the vote, but the point is we certainly will be able to make our views heard, and those views, I believe, have been listened to over the past. I can give one example. When the issue of statutory rape was raised in the House, the legislation was amended. I made an amendment to have the age raised from 14 to 16. I had suggested 18, but there were some persons who were out of school and adult at 18, and we got a compromise at 16. And I believe that that is the kind of representation which we can bring, and also to ensure that Nevis is not negatively affected by legislation, policies in the Assembly in St. Kitts.
Mr. Daniel, 1 minute.
Yes, I am of the view that until and unless we have a different kind of structure, we need to ensure that the people of Nevis are represented at all levels. But it goes beyond just taking part in the elections, and it goes beyond just being elected. It speaks to being able to connect with what's happening on the ground and be able to carry these concerns right up to the top. And that means in the legislature. The legislature is a critically important body. It is the lawmaking body. It's the highest court in the land. So we have to be part and parcel of that process.
Mr. Amory, do you need to make any further comment?
No, I do believe that the Parliament is important, and I am very concerned that Nevis gets the best representation to ensure that whatever bits of legislation are presented in the Assembly gets the input from representatives of Nevis, and to make sure that we are properly represented on the issue and that we are not affected negatively, because that is quite possible.
Next question, Mr. Amory will have a first go at it. Mr. Amory, your party campaigned for the last federal elections, and indeed for the past few federal elections. And you would have campaigned on certain issues, as we would say, on a certain platform. You had representation in the last Federal Assembly. Give us a sense of some of the campaign promises that you made and some of the achievements that you made as you represented the people of Nevis in the Federal Assembly, and you mean in your party.
In respect of the Federal Assembly, I think our most noteworthy achievement over the years was to have the bits of legislation which were threatening the Nevis economy, the offshore sector, modified, changed so that Nevis was not adversely affected. And I've heard tell that whether or not we were eloquent or made representation, they need not have been changed. But the fact is, because we objected to the legislation being placed in the House in the way they were placed, and which, if they were not objected to by myself and representatives from Nevis, those bits of legislation would have destroyed the Nevis offshore financial services sector. That is one of our achievements. Whether people want to think we were able to do it or not, the fact is we did. The other matter was to deal with issues dealing with police and security. I think we have been very strong on that, and although the matter of police is not the responsibility of Nevis, we have made certain that we get the federal parliament to deal with the matters of police and security in a way which has changed in some degree how security is done, to ensure that the atmosphere, the environment is safe and secure in Nevis. I know we have the issues of crime, and the police certainly have to be able to come to grips with that. I have made suggestions for the police training to be modernized and to be changed to include matters of psychology and management, so that the police can in fact deal with the people in the community. And I feel that we will see something like this, because I will continue to agitate for that. It is a necessary, important part of our development.
Mr. Daniel, 2 minutes.
Well, certainly I would have hoped that the representatives in Nevis would have, from Nevis, during the last term there was the introduction of the $5,000 environmental tax on cars. And I think that is viewed by many persons as an oppressive tax. And in much the same way as we would expect that my colleague Patrice Nisbet, I did hear him speak on the introduction of the tax. I would have hoped that we could have had the people of Nevis. If you get on the internet and you get a car and you get it simply to pay a $5,000 tax, people quarrel about the tax. I don't know if that, it is not my sense that that quarrel had found expression in the parliament. And that's an indication also that we need stronger representation. In addition to that, as I mentioned in my opening comments, we have seen a number of taxes introduced in the federal parliament. What we need to, I have not seen the kind of studied approach and with the development of alternatives so that we could find a way of reducing the tax burden while at the same time we recognize the need for revenue. But certainly from my own listening of the people, I think they find great difficulty with the environmental tax. Thank you very much.
Mr. Amory, would you like to add anything further?
I think the issue of the environmental tax is one issue in which we certainly raise our concern. But the rationale was the fear that there would be a dumping of vehicles in the developed or the developing countries. And the concern was there had to be some means by which the government would be able to rid the country of the dump vehicles. This has not turned out to be the case, and I do know that we have discussed with the federal government the concern and whether or not this tax ought not to be repealed. And I get a sense that this is being considered, and I do trust that it will be repealed to remove that tax from the books.
Okay? Okay. So we'll move on to the next question, which is almost a follow-up to the question that I just asked, and it will be interesting. Who, Mr. Descent, is the question for? Mr. Amory? Mr. Amory? Mr. Amory? Yes, Mr. Amory, we've just asked.
The question is for Mr.
It's for Mr. Daniel. I'm sorry about it. Mr. Daniel. Mr. Daniel, I just asked whether or not what were your party's achievements due to the representation that you made in the parliament last time. The question now is, as you campaign for this election and ask the voters of Nevis to send you to the federal parliament, the question is, how can you, by your representation, improve the lives of the people of Nevis by your representation in the federal parliament?
I think Webbo, I work best with teams and I work best in collaboration with people, and I believe that the members of the parliament get to the parliament on the basis that they are committed, even if not so, at least everybody says so, that they can provide some improvement in the quality of life of the people. Certainly, when I mentioned the national health scheme, I really want to do that, because I really think the way our health services are organized, not necessarily from the point of view of government, but from the point of view that much of the responsibility is left with the individual. I think the same ideas which inform social security, where you didn't leave a man up to himself to provide for himself in later life, the same ideas need now to be infused into a national health policy, because I really think this one is bothering people, very often I meet people who are having all sorts of problems, and they have to take this money from their savings, and in many cases some people's salaries are limited. That is a critical matter. Certainly the other matter has to do with the crime and violence, and I really believe that those of us in Nevis and St. Kitts, we are worried about that. If crime and violence is allowed to get out of hand, I mean, we are a peaceful country, but if we don't put a cap on it in terms of focusing heavily on prevention, we can end up, if we improve the management, the prevention and control of crime, by extension we improve the quality of lives. Because, you know, Webbo, if you look at the companies now, a number of them are hiring security guards to guard their property. That money for paying those security guards come from us.
Mr. Amory, 2 minutes.
In our representation to improve the quality of life for our people, I think there are a number of issues. Education is a critical issue, and education policy is formulated at the federal parliament. In Nevis, there is the implementation of that policy. I believe a strong education policy can help, and implementation can help to elevate the people by their being trained academically, technically, and being able to perform jobs in the community to improve their quality of life. I think that is important. The matter of a safe environment is also critical. And I said I have championed the cause of upgrade of police to ensure that we have rehabilitation for recidivist persons who commit crimes. We need to have them properly counseled. The police need to be trained to work in the community so that we can prevent crime. There's another important issue, and the matter of health is important as well. The Nevis Island administration has been plowing heavily into its resources, but we have recommended the issue of a medical benefit scheme, similar to what Mr. Daniel is saying. This is something we have put forward, and in fact we have legislation already drafted to be tabled on this issue because we think it is critical, and we certainly will work with the federal government on it. We had examined the Constitution to see whether or not we could do it in Nevis, and we would have gone ahead were we able to do it, but the Constitution does not allow us to do that. But certainly we will be recommending this to the federal government because we do have some legislation already to help provide for long-term care, high-cost care of health.
Mr. Daniel, 1 minute.
Just to say that I really, in terms of, I think we should, in terms of a national health scheme, it's good for us to broaden the base of coverage so that if St. Kitts and Nevis are in whatever, it allows for a lower level of contribution, and then it spread out the benefits. So, and of course, we can make this might be something which the other OECS countries might copy. Just as we are now talking about harmonizing social security, we might be able to harmonize the scheme, because the more people are in the scheme, the lower the coverage, so that we could broaden the base of coverage.
Mr. Amory, another comment?
I think we have looked at that and so how we can get everybody into this net, because health is the right of every single citizen. And our policy would have been to make it contributory across the board, and to ensure that nobody is left out and people take hold of and ownership of the scheme, so that we do not feel that it's a penalty, but it is something, an investment in the health. And I feel that it is workable. We know what has happened in Antigua, but we do not have to go the Antigua route. We can have something totally different, and something which the people can feel good about, and which can help them to secure their health and make them feel comfortable in their life here in Nevis.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Daniel.
Yeah, just one other thing. I think some people might want to be able to provide for higher levels of care for their families, so you can allow people to contribute to this scheme if it allows them, for instance, to get particular high-level medical attention overseas, but you have there could be certain bands of coverage.
Still on the follow-up question, new question. Mr. Amory, some of the plans and aspirations as far as improving the lives of the citizens of Nevis that have been put forth by you have been agreed on by Mr. Daniel and vice versa. The question is, do you think that your party, if it is sent to the federal parliament once more for representation, but is not in a wholesome way, that is, you do not get the 3 seats, you can work together with the Nevis Reformation Party, who obviously would have had the difference in the seats, if the issue is important for the people of Nevis, so that you can have, as the campaign slogan says, one voice.
Well, that has been, Webb, I think that's a very good question. It has always been our slogan, campaign objective, that when the division politicians speak, and we would like to have the 3 seats, but if we don't get the 3 seats, we are prepared to work along with the members in the assembly, in the Federal Assembly, on an issue for Nevis, and trust that we can get the full support across the board, because when all is said and done, the fact is, how well do we represent the issues of Nevis, and how well do we ensure that the people of Nevis benefit in a wholesome way from any legislation or policy which the federal parliament deals with. And I believe that I could work with anyone on those matters, because the issue would then be what is best for Nevis would be best for myself or my party or whoever represents my party in the Federal Assembly, and we can collaborate and cooperate on those issues. The matters I've raised, the matters of health, education, the matter of security and social development, and those matters are all matters of importance to everybody. And therefore, I don't see that we ought to differentiate on party grounds on those matters, because those matters are basic, they're fundamental to the existence of people in Nevis, and can help to improve the way our societies exist, the way our peoples live together, and the way they are able to empower themselves and enhance their lives and their livelihood for themselves, for their children into the future. So clearly we can work together on those issues.
Mr. Daniel?
As I said, Webbo, I function best in a team, and I think a lot of times we make there's strength in differences, there's strength in our differences, the differences, and I say that all the time with respect to the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis. Or I think the greatest difficulty we have with collaboration is that the people's egos get into the way, and and it's very important, if we are working on an issue, there must be a level of trust, a level of commitment, and a level of understanding that we can together. It's amazing what people can do working together. I don't think we have worked together as much as we should, but certainly I am not averse to working on critical matters. I mean, when you sit down on a matter like healthcare, what you want to do is to make sure that all the ideas that come forward are workable, and we can throw them out and so on. But certainly the chance to work together to do things for Nevis, I've always done that. I am a member of the St. John's Community Improvement Club. I've been a member since we founded the club 27 years ago. So, and we've had huge differences in style and approach and in management and so on. But it has stayed, and we've been able to do things for the benefit of the people of Nevis. A lot of times people think that leadership suddenly falls on you when you become a parliamentarian or collaboration. I think if you have had an opportunity to collaborate and share in the past, that is just taken at a higher level.
Mr. Amory?
No, there's one example where we were able in the Parliament in St. Kitts to work together, and I do recall in 1996 and I referred to those infamous bits of legislation because there was a unity of voice and purpose between the representatives of the Leaving Reformation Party and the Concerned Citizens Movement in Parliament. And we sat together and we discussed how the changes should be made, and we were able successfully to stop what we have come to recognize as iniquitous bits of legislation. So it is possible because the interest has to be the people of Nevis, not the personality and not the individual, but what is good for the entire community of Nevis. Because after all, we are their representatives. They would have elected us to represent their concerns, and their concerns must be our priority and our most important cause for being in that assembly.
And Mr. Daniel?
Well, the opportunities for collaboration and cooperation, and as I said, there is nothing which says we can't collaborate. And if we go to St. Kitts and be representing different parties, most importantly, we represent one island.
New question, and indeed a different area. Much has been said, especially by the parties in St. Kitts, about the electoral process. Are you satisfied with the electoral process?
No, I am not. I cannot be. I have difficulty all the time getting people registered. I have had the trouble of taking people to the registration office and they are not registered. Go in, come back, they register the names, and yet the names are not on the list. I think really I have taken part in an election before where I wasn't satisfied that the process was fair and smooth and transparent. I think we need the assistance of the Commonwealth and other international and regional bodies to do a la Antigua, where we begin afresh and put the names and let begin an entire process of enumeration. The electoral process is critical to the democratic process, because if people feel that instinctively that the process is faulty and that the process is manipulated, then I think sometimes we don't recognize how much we are threatening the democratic process. Our democracy that we have is anchored on this one man, one vote basis. And that process has to be transparent, has to be fair. For instance, if you go now to vote, you don't have to have an ID. But if you go to the registration office to register to vote, you have to have an ID. There must be something wrong with that. And the ease with which some people get on the voters list, and the last election, for instance, people who normally vote in this place found themselves in other places. Those things are wrong.
Mr. Amory?
Mr. Webbo, I think the electoral process is not foolproof. There are definite areas which can be improved. And one such area, because of the seeming lack of interest, especially among young people, in registering to vote, I believe there has to be an improvement in the way the process of registration is conducted. I recommended some time ago that we go to the position where the registration officers go into the different communities and conduct the registration instead of having a central position in Charleston where people come. That is one thing which could be done, the improvement in the registration process. I do believe also that the process of elections, on the day of elections, the matter of ID is important. It's not that it cannot be tampered with, but at least it would minimize some of the accusations which are being placed on the system. The system, I think, has outgrown itself in that everybody does not know everybody anymore. The social structure has changed, and we have to change the system to take recognition of this change. The matter of domicile and residency, those are issues which people are not clear about. I think some lawyers have sought to explain it, but in explaining it appears to confuse the issue more. What is important is that we have people of integrity managing the system, and also provide them with the support systems to ensure that the democratic process is not compromised, and that people can feel that justice is being done when they go to vote, and those who are contesting can feel that they are not being shortchanged, they're not being robbed, quote unquote, and in the process.
Mr. Daniel.
You see, Webbo, my thing is that I think we have been very slow as a society in shaking off some of these colonial approaches to governance. I firmly believe the country is small, and I would like to see this constituency where divide the country into 5 promotes parochialism. If you're the minister responsible for works and you represent constituency A, in nearly right across the Caribbean, you see a marked difference in the infrastructure in that constituency compared to the others. I would also like to see, even if not on its own, I think they do it in Tortola, you have an at-large system where the candidates also run at large. So everybody has to campaign everywhere, and so you are responsible to everybody. The present system as it stands, where I represent this area, and so I look after this area, while I serve as a national minister for something else, but you could see the disparity between the constituencies. So I think to help our system along, we need to try something else. I don't know. You see, it's better to fail at an honest initiative than to continue to maintain the system which is not working in the best interest of all concerned.
Any quick comment, Mr. Amory?
I feel the electoral process can be improved. How has to be worked out, the details have to be worked out. I am differing a little bit with Mr. Daniel on this issue. I think the matter of governance has nothing to do in direct proportion with the constituency system. I think in a number of countries the constituency system works very well. I think it depends then on the integrity of the government, which then has to implement the policies which are placed in the manifesto on the government's program of works. So in that I do have a difference, because you have a situation where you have proportional representation, say in Guyana, and I don't think there's a country which has more difficulties. And I think in the BVI, the matter of at large and so on, an experiment which doesn't seem to have worked so well. So I think the system depends on whether or not people have the integrity to enter into transparent
another 30 seconds,
governance.
Mr. Daniel, if you need.
I would want a system left up to people having integrity, because I would want a system that enforces a certain kind of responsibility and enforces consensus, enforces a particular approach, so that we can have a nice system. But if we get a good man this time and then we don't get a good man next time, we have a problem. So I am strong on systems, putting the systems in place which I know no system is foolproof, but we can try.
New question. Who's this question for? Mr. Amory? Mr. Daniel? Mr. Daniel, yes. What is your take on what may be described as a volatile situation in St. Kitts, where the campaign is heated up with accusations from both sides? Do you have any concerns as a Nivision leader who is campaigning to be a part of the governance of St. Kitts and Nevis?
I am not overly worried about that, and I think we are not to pay too much attention to that, because the more we say so, it appears as if the greater the response, or the more intense the response. Politics in St. Kitts has always attracted a greater degree of a higher tempo than in Nevis. It has to do with the personalities, has to do with the personality of the two, personality differences in the two peoples. I know the history of the country. It's a plantation society. There's a tremendous pressure for resources and resource allocation and so on. And that, I think in time, Webbo, in Jamaica in 1980, over 1,000 persons were killed on behalf of the politicians in both parties. In the last election, there are just a few. People have over time recognized that both of them have been in power, both parties have been in power, and the large majority of the people are still struggling. Probably that will have to happen before that they will arrive at that conclusion. But I know in the lead up to elections, in most countries it's always the heat is on, but I am not overly worried about that, because I know that after Tuesday everything can cool down again and we can move forward.
Mr. Amory?
Yeah, I believe the elections in St. Kitts will be conducted in an atmosphere of intensity, because people want to be elected, they want to appeal to their supporters, they want to appeal to the person to swing votes. So there will be some intensity and heat. But my instincts tell me, and I think my judgment says to me, that they will be peaceful. I have no questions in my own mind that we will have a peaceful elections in St. Kitts. I think both leaders, or all the three leaders, will have to ensure that they appeal to their followers, their constituents, their members, to recognize a good sense of ensuring that the environment remains safe and peaceful. Otherwise, it will hamper the development of St. Kitts, and by extension Nevis as well. So, but I do believe, Webbo, that there will be a peaceful elections. I have no questions at all in my mind about that.
That's okay. Final question from myself, and then we will go to the phone lines. Mr. Amory, you'll take the question first. Mr. Amory, do you think that Nevis should govern itself? And do you think, why should your party be the party to govern Nevis and not the other party or parties?
Well, my short answer is yes, Nevis should govern itself in all respects. I think my party's position is quite clear on that. Maybe we have not articulated the future aspect of it, but I would welcome any suggestions and recommendations on how we could get the message over to people more clearly. But I am satisfied that the people of Nevis ought to be an independent people. Now, I know there are talk about the size of the country, but the size is not an impediment to either development or sustainability, especially in a world where there are cross-border movements of capital and people and investment and trade liberalization and things like that. The advantage to Nevis would be for that the people, the government, people through the government would have access to bilateral and international sources of funding. They will have the recognition which will make Nevis not have to be dependent on someone else making a policy for it. Even in the face of globalization, I think it would be good for Nevis. I believe that we have demonstrated the capacity as a party in government, the ability to manage the economy of Nevis, to make sure that there is growth in the economy, to ensure that people have good quality jobs, and those things are critical to sustainability and to the viability of a small country. I am certain that cycles will occur, but I believe at this time in Nevis, the CCM party has shown that it is the party which can initially manage the affairs of Nevis and do it well.
Mr. Daniel, 2 minutes.
I have no difficulty with governing with most people. I don't think anywhere in the world anybody disagrees that they should govern themselves. The question arises, of course, will we govern ourselves well? Will we allow destructive partisan political posturings to get in the way? Will economics take precedence over politics? Will we be able? And all of this is based on how we have done. Okay, so those questions, will we be able to move forward as a people? Those questions come into your mind. The Nevis Reformation Party in government had anchored its policy on human resource development through training at all levels, and also from an economic standpoint, focusing heavily on tourism. In its last term of government, it had the Four Seasons Hotel and the Mount Nevis Hotel. So I think the question is not whether the parties can. And to me, what is most important for small countries, I think we often get caught up with more of politics, and I think the critical question is economics and the development of our human resource development and empowerment of our people. I am not happy that there are not enough local business people who can employ 20 people, 30 people, 40 people. I have difficulty being in an independent country where the local people are not empowered through education, through the provision of particular incentives which drive entrepreneurship. I think that is a critical matter which we have to address, because in the scheme of things, as we go forward, it is what we own and we will be able to depend on as we move on.
Mr. Amory?
Well, I want to differ, and not in substance, in the fact that the small businesses in Nevis have shown tremendous growth over the last 10, 12 years, and began to show signs of growth before that. The tourism industry, yes, is largely owned by foreign investment. But that is not a negative, because if you're talking of globalization, we must see a role for foreign investment. What is important is a number of small businesses, Nevision-owned, are growing up and taking advantage of that spin-off from foreign investment. And they are creating value and creating employment in this country. I have before me a request for concession from a local businessman who is involved in production of items locally for an investment of over $1 million to upgrade his business, to expand his business. We have other investment requests for locals to engage in manufacturing of small items, cottage industries. They may seem insignificant, but a lot of the large economies now in Japan, Taiwan, and England started off by having the cottage industry, small persons doing work in their homes, employing 2-3 people and growing. And I hear this from them, and I see the benefits of this. And I believe we are on the right track. And politics does not play a part in this. It is purely employment creation, income generation.
Mr. Daniel, any further?
There is a very strong view among local business people that they do not get the same kind of attention, concession, what you will, interest in their business as non-Nevisians. Also, you have to look carefully at the number of, while there may be growth in some, you also need to check to see how many of them have gone under, so that it's not that those that were there before must go, but those which were there before must continue to grow, and new ones come on board. Okay.
And quick comment.
A quick rebuttal. I don't know that the fiscal incentives and concessions are not given to locals. We have so many examples, and I don't want to call any names, who are entitled and receive concessions to invest in their business from government. The magnitude of the business can dictate the magnitude of the concession, but small businesses get duty-free concession if they are investing in upgrading of their plant, or if they're engaging in manufacturing. If it's a clothing, if it's a furniture or something like that, they get concessions from government.
Okay.
And I believe that is not a statement which is relevant to this government in Nevis.
Okay, gentlemen, that's the time allotted for the questions from the host. We will go now to the telephones in just a minute, and I can tell you they're already lighting up. 869-469-1616 and 1700. By the way, we're also back after some difficulties live on the internet as well. www.vonradio.com. Now, we, as most of you, the candidates would know, we also had suggested to the public that perchance they think they might not get in by phone, they can drop off a question for the candidates. We got just one questions for the Nevis Reformation Party. Mr. Daniel, I have here on a sheet 3 questions, and I'm going to ask you just one of the questions. I'm going to do it in a sort of a lottery. Pick any number between 1 and 3, and then I'll ask you the question that's there.
You're a gambler.
Just trying to be any number, Mr. Daniel.
No, that's not right. 1, 2, 2, 2.
Number 2.
2. Yeah, 2.
NRP says they want constitutional reform. Will you take out 113, or will you leave it in? If it is in, give a reason. If you're taking it out, give a reason.
There is no reason to take out 113 out of the Constitution, and we don't agree with any sunset provision either. Constitutional reform doesn't mean that you eliminate 113 from the Constitution. 113 is there. That's not something to tangle with. The critical matter is to see how you can reorder the Constitution so that life in Nevis progresses and people make money and be happy.
Mr. Emery, like to make a quick comment on it, about half a minute.
113 has to remain, but you know our position on that. We have evoked it, and we're going to pursue the provisions of 113 in the Constitution.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. We will go to the telephone lines. Callers, our numbers are 869-469-1616 and 1700. Once again, we ask of you that when you have made connection, you ask your question, and that's exactly what it is. We will not tolerate long statements. If you're going to give a preamble before you ask a question, please make it brief. Indeed, make the question brief so that the caller, the candidate can answer. And candidates, we ask you to be as brief but as comprehensive as you can with your answers. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening. I have 3 questions.
How about you ask just one?
Okay, I have 3, but I will call back. Mr. Amory, during a broadcast, you stated that you would not pay the additional increase that cable TV levied against us. Having made that statement, sir, what provisions have you implemented to ensure that this additional financial burden be removed from the people of Navy? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amory?
Yeah, well, I think I've been misunderstood, but I will not get into the misunderstanding. I made a decision because I had no contract with cable TV to provide more service for myself. And when I received a bill, I decided personally not to pay. But let me take you back. The administration in cabinet, in response to a request by cable TV, which indicated that they were being asked by Nivisions to provide more channels, and they had done a survey. They advised us. We didn't ask for the result of the survey in terms of how many persons. We accepted them at their word, and we said, okay, after much discussion, if there are persons who require the additional service, then you can charge those persons the additional cost which you're charging for your service. And that was the cabinet's position. Now it appears as if that was miscommunicated to cable, and they across the board charged the additional $10 for the however many channels they were putting forward. And because I knew what cabinet had decided, I decided, well, I was not offered and I did not accept additional channels. So there was no need for me to pay the other money because I didn't want any more channels, and that is why I made that statement. But I need to say, though, that statement was made in context of the quality of the channels and the service in terms of the programming. And I did not feel that I should pay for more of the same, which would not edify myself. And I think people need to be more discriminating in what they pay for. And I'm sure if you had gone to a store and you'd seen some good and the price had gone up, you would have made some fuss with the person who's trying to sell you the goods. But it appears as if people are afraid to contest or make any questions or question the cable TV company, because we seem to be hooked on cable TV. And I want to say this, that we are going to ensure that the policy of the cabinet is carried out. I have a meeting which I'm scheduling to get that done. We had scheduled a meeting before just to make sure we can understand each other, the cable company and the government. And once we get that meeting sorted out, we will then make a statement on the rectification of that matter.
Mr. Daniel, any quick comment on that?
Well, if my own position is that if I didn't think I should pay, I would insist that the rest of the country not pay. And that if I was in charge, then since I personally have some difficulty with it, and they went across the board and did it, then we would have had to have, the next action would have been for me to insist that it couldn't be charged, since I had difficulty with it. But if persons want it, they pay. But if you didn't ask for it and you get an additional fee, certainly let us go forward and remove it, as that is what I wanted to see.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Amory. So what you are telling me about the cable TV, if we didn't ask for the extra channel, should we get a refund then? Because I'll be paying $84 all the time. And
okay, we've got your question. As I said, please try and ask. The question is, if they did not ask for the extra channel and it was added on, what?
We will discuss that with the cable TV to see what recourse we can have. Because as I said, we were advised by them that the people were asking for it. And my comment to the persons that told me that was this: we have to save the people from themselves. I don't think people need more channels. And it is possible I ought to have followed that argument, but presented with the consumerism which seems to have gripped the people of Nevis, I thought it was a genuine request by people for more channels. But we will sort that out, and we will have some accommodation with the cable TV people.
Any comment, Mr. Daniel?
No, well, if it is that, it seems to me as if that this has to be done speedily, because people want to make sure that if the government doesn't approve of it, then they shouldn't pay.
No, let me not say the government did not approve. What the government approved was those who wanted it, that there should then have been an offer.
Yeah, Mr. Emery, the way I understand Mr. Daniel, you said you're going to address it.
Yeah, we will address it.
But it must be done speedily.
Yeah.
When will it be done?
I have a meeting which I'm scheduling for next Wednesday. And once we meet, we will then work that out, because we need to get it sorted out.
Good evening, thank you for holding. I'm sorry about that, please try again. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening. I have one question. Why are you taking part in the federal election? You have a referendum. And what do you hope to achieve in the meantime?
Why are we taking part in? The caller, perhaps it has not been listening, or is fixed and stuck on that matter. Now, no one of us can guarantee that the referendum which we will hold will succeed. Now, if we did not contest, and let us just say the agreement or the discussion we'd had with NRP not taking part in fair elections, and they said, okay, we will honor it, we will not participate either, and we left a situation where anyone could be nominated, because it's constitutionally there for anybody to be nominated or contest elections, federal elections. We could have had a situation where when the referendum comes, we would have had people not or nominated who would represent Nevis, who were not representing the interests of Nevis. The referendum comes and we fail by one vote. What then happens? And it is that situation which we want to ensure does not happen. We want to make sure that if the people don't want, I can't force anybody to vote in a referendum, nor can I force people to vote in the federal elections, but I would like everybody to vote in the federal elections, and when the referendum comes, to vote there as well. But I cannot guarantee. We can only put the facts before the people, and we therefore have to ensure that we do not leave the people of Nevis in a lurch, and having people who do not represent their interest representing them by default. And that is why we are contesting, to make sure that we are in this contest and give the people a chance to elect people who will represent their interest in the Federal Assembly.
Can I ask a question to help see whether we can clarify this issue of vote? Mr. Emery, do you think the Nevis Reformation Party and the Concerned Citizens Movement should both take part in the election? And Mr. Daniel, the same question. Do you think that both parties should take part in the federal election? Quick answer, and we'll go back to the lines.
I think we should.
Mr. Daniel?
It's a constitutional right, and
I only speak for the Nevis Reformation Party. We have always taken part. Something is worrying me a little bit. It's 20 years now we've had federal elections. 20 years. So, I mean, since 1984, this is the sixth federal election, something like that. So we've always taken part.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
This question is for Mr. Amory. Mr. Amory, you spoke about a national education policy that you and your party is interested in. I recall that some years ago, you and your party was campaigning and saying that you don't have to be educated to get through in life, but all you have to do is to love your country. And shortly after that, I remember that your administration stopped the SELF program where children benefited from more uniform and books in Nevis. My question is, what have you and your team brought to Nevision in regard to education from a federal level? Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, the matter of self-program, we had nothing to do with that. That was a national program. The federal government saw it fit to change this self-program as it was introduced, and introduced a means test and things like that. From the national policy, we have looked at new programs for our schools to ensure people are exposed to not just academic training, but to training in technology, computers. We have improved the technical aspect of training at the Charleston Secondary School and the Gingerland Secondary School. We have added to the curriculum training in cultural development and in music and dance and so on, because we feel that there is a total person to be developed, and it's not just academic or technical, but there are also social aspects to development. And I feel that we are seeing the benefits of that development, of our children or young people playing steel band, having interest in stringed instruments, and we certainly will be putting into place within the next year the blowing wind instruments in the schools. We see dance in the schools. We see our children singing more and enjoying themselves in cultural presentations. Those are important parts of education. And I feel that the people of Nevis have seen that difference and seen that benefit. And we will continue to push for those kinds of things and put them in place in Nevis.
Mr. Daniel?
Yeah, I think there are some fundamental matters to be addressed in education. One of which has to do with with ensuring that the children in primary school learn to read early and develop reading, so that there is need for the expansion and development of library services to go along with schools. Also, it is important for us, we have specialist teachers in the high schools. It seems to me that certainly in the area of English, certainly in the area of mathematics and science, we need to have specialist teachers. The question arises, of course, there is a huge matter which has to do with the whole with the where teaching comes in the scheme of things. And what we find now we need to do is that we need to take teaching as outside of the regular, certainly for me, from a policy level, at federal level. I want to see teaching and teachers separated from the public service and be treated separately, and their remuneration package linked to performance, success of students in the school, so that if you're teaching a class, I don't think we have a system in place for monitoring and evaluation of the performances of these teachers and students, so that you could teach a class and half the children are unable to read. It's quite possible. I'm not saying it's happening, but it's quite possible, because I don't see an intense monitoring and evaluation of that. But certainly we need to look at teaching separate and apart. In a small country, the education system is key.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to a very distinguished panel. This is a question for Mr. Daniel. Mr. Daniel, you indicated in your presentation that your party is interested in electoral reform.
Yes.
Would NRP also consider tabling legislation in the federal parliament to create a fixed date for the election?
Oh, very much so. I am 100% in favor of that. I've said so on the platform. I think the reason being called that I really want us to attach a little more seriousness to elections. There's too much entertainment going on around elections, and elections are serious business. It's about choosing candidates who become ministers of government to run countries. I believe one of the things we need to copy from the United States is that fix the date, so we know when the date, so we know, we prepare, we expect the date. Now we have the present system we have, of course, it provides some more excitement and so on. You don't know whenever elections are after the fourth year of a government, you begin to see signs of all sorts of things. The resources of the country are badly used, and that to deal with, to catch because call up, a lot of this has to do with catching the opposition off guard. So every time the leader of the country speaks, you wonder if it's the date, and then he gets everybody guessing and then back again. So I find we lose a lot of man hours on this, and I really want us to settle down to be a lot more productive. So for me, I will fix the date and legislation to that effect. That will, because I get the sense that that elections now don't take the kind of seriousness, so that if you have some entertainment on a weekend and all of a sudden you have something else happening, that's it. No, fix the date, everybody knows when it is, and then we can prepare ourselves adequately.
Mr. Amory, any comment on that?
I won't be proposing fixed dates, and it has nothing to do with whether or not I feel elections are not serious. I feel the people generally take the voting seriously. I think people have gone out to participate in elections. What is being called entertainment and being thrown as a negative, it's not a negative, because the whole process of reaching the electorate, the populace, has changed. The matter of speaking to people by way of the media and not just on the platform, and whether or not we believe it or not, the matter of talking to people on the platform sometimes does not reach to them, because people are having their own entertainment anyway. They are talking, they're not listening, and maybe that is why sometimes campaigners tend to spice up the rhetoric to attract people. So I don't feel that having a fixed date or not having a fixed date will make any difference. People take the election seriously. Oh. And again, it comes back to whether or not the persons who are engaged in the campaign, whenever it is done, whether it is done all year round, for 4 years, 1 year, or 6 months, or 6 weeks, or whatever, it depends on the persons who are involved, and we cannot take the persons out of it. We see what is happening in the United States. They have a fixed date, but they have been at this for 2 years, and we are still at a point where the comments are saying that this is just a circus. So that doesn't make any difference. I think what is important in the electoral process is that the persons who are engaged in the process are prepared to deal with integrity, are prepared to bring to the people sound policies which will affect positively the lives of people, and not seek to incite or to use rhetoric to catch people. I think those are the problems. It's nothing to do with fixed date or non-fixed date.
I think entertainment takes away from the seriousness.
Gentlemen, the time has just about expired, and as I indicated, it's going to be up to you. Now, what says thou?
You go another 5 minutes.
Another 5 minutes? Okay, now, in that 5 minutes, though, I'm sure that the public is going to perhaps feel a little shortchanged. The public has been very cooperative. The public has been very cooperative. 15 minutes. Okay. The public has been very cooperative in keeping their questions brief. I cannot say that yes, but I cannot say of you that you have been keeping the answers very brief. So we will try and
a brief question does not necessarily.
No, but I asked for a brief answer, and the reason why I asked for it is so that we can get more persons to be able to engage you.
All right, and the 15 minutes will be brief.
Please. Good evening. Thank you for holding. Good evening. You're on the air.
Oh, good evening.
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay. First of all, quickly, I must congratulate our Honorable Premier and Mr. Daniel for attending the show. I must apologize. I missed the first half because I was busy doing something.
Give us the question, please.
Okay, quick question. I'm going to vote in this election. I would like to know from both parties if they intend to be part of a federal government should the opportunity arise.
Okay. That's it? Answer?
My party has not given consideration to that matter. And the reason for that is I believe the people in St. Kitts, where the majority of seats reside, will vote for a party in the majority there.
Mr. Daniel?
Well, when I put on my running shoes in elections, I am running to take the charge for any situation which arises, in government or out of government.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yes, this question is for both gentlemen. Could somebody have been reading the newspaper and over time I'm hearing about this $300,000 leaving Nevis. Could any of you say something about it?
And the $300,000 leaving Nevis. Anyone would like to comment on that?
I'm sure they have a lot of money leaving Nevis all the time in different ways. What is he talking about?
Caller, you still there? I think the caller is trying to be as brief as possible. The caller has left. I believe, if I may assume, and it said in the newspaper, it involved, I believe, Mark Anderson.
Oh, that
issue.
Okay, that matter. Well, that matter is under judicial review, and it relates to a down payment which someone made to the government, but which never got into the government's coffers, because I gather people are saying that he left the treasury. It did not, right? Mr. Anderson was, at the time, the escrow agent. That means he held the money for and on behalf of the government. We have asked him to pay the government his money, and that is where the matter is at the time.
Mr. Daniel, you want to make any comment on it?
Well, I have been reading the newspapers, and I am seeing here, I have a letter printed on the front page of the Leeward Times saying that, signed by one Malcolm Gishard, written to one David Drewsbury, manager for Caribbean Bank, that saying that the Nevis Island administration has no opposition with respect to the transfer of funds over which he has control as an escrow agent. So I have the matter here. The people of Nevis, I would dare say, believe that they have been shortchanged with their $300,000, and I am to hope that the matter will resolve sooner rather than later.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening. This question is to Mr. Amory.
Could you speak a little louder?
Yes. This question is for Mr. Amory. I am concerned about the educational system here in Nevis. It is supposed to be one of the vital keys to the child's development. But right now, as I speak, at the high school in Zindaland, there is no agricultural science teacher. And the term is almost finished. So I'm wondering what is being done to address this issue or crisis, because it is something that needs to be addressed.
Mr. Amory?
No, well, what the school is doing is trying to recruit someone full-time for the program. What we have advised is that we have part-time persons go in to teach the program to ensure that the students who have an interest in agricultural science, because that is an important part of our development. And we have, over the years, ensured that there are teachers, but it's very difficult to get a full-time recruit. I spoke to someone on Tuesday about this matter, and we are thinking of possibly transferring the person into that school to ensure we have a full-time teacher. But there's cooperation and collaboration between Agricultural Ministry and Education to get this problem resolved.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Hi, good evening. I have a question for Mr. Daniel.
Yes.
Yes, good evening. Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
In your radio address that has been playing for the last couple of days, you mentioned about an achievement that you and your colleagues did in St. John's in terms of the provision of the community library.
Yes.
When you speak to you and your colleagues, is this a community effort or a party effort? I'm a bit confused because I don't understand the word colleague.
colleagues in the St. John's Community Improvement Club.
Thank you, sir. I thought it was
the political colleagues.
The political colleagues. I was congratulating the NRP for such a great move.
No, well, you could congratulate me as a member of the NRP and SGCI.
Well,
I wear two hats.
Well, I would like to personally congratulate the St. John's community for having the wisdom and the foresight to organize a community library.
I hope you come and bring your children.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to ask both the gentlemen a question. Good evening, Mr. Premier. Good evening, Mr. Daniel.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Mr. Premier, when the second referendum fails, would you attempt to do it again? And also, I'd like to find out if you have any idea as to how much money has been spent on the secession movement so far. And I have a question for Mr. Daniel.
Could you ask the other question?
Mr. Daniel, have you been in contact with any of the insurance companies with regard to the medical scheme that you are attempting to propose? And if you have, tell us what they have recommended to you with regard to coverage. And if you have not, what would be the coverage that would be proposed under the medical scheme that you're contemplating?
Okay, Mr. Amory, your question.
Personally, if or when we put the referendum to the people and it fails, I personally would not be prepared to go through that process again. Doesn't mean that I will not support, but as a leader, it will be very hard to do that. I believe the people of Nevis have to make up their minds on the matter of voting for it. The matter of how much money has been paid for the process of this, I don't have that number, caller. It is something which I'll have to get the Ministry of Finance to deal with, and then let us know what we have spent on it.
Mr. Daniel?
I'll have to get to the Parliament to begin to flesh out this thing. Remember, it's a broad-based thing. It hasn't gone that far in terms of sitting down with insurance companies. What I do know from in an attempt to respond to a critical need in the society, this needs to be done. But the dynamics and the mechanics of insurance companies and coverage and cost and contributions and so on, that is best done too by somebody who is into actuarial science. It's better for them to study that and make recommendations and so on.
Just let me say, Webbo, on the matter of the referendum, I don't know if I said, but I will always support independence for Nevis. I will always support that because I think it's the best way for the people of Nevis to go. But if the referendum fails the next time around, and I'm going to be very honest, I would not be leading the charge in that regard. I will support it. I will vote yes for it any day that is brought forward. But I think someone else will have to take up that mantle and run with that ball. And I'm being very honest on that.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Mr. Amory.
Yes?
I would like to know what is the relevance of this campaign to Onion, Joseph Nile, and Cause Fire? What does this help to bring across the issues and educators?
What we're trying to do by bringing persons, and these are people from the Caribbean, we are Caribbean people, and we are using our entertainers from the Caribbean to get our people to socialize together. I don't think that is detrimental. We, at the meetings, put forward the issues. And if the people listen, I spoke on Saturday night in the intermittent rain, and people listened to what I was discussing with them in terms of the platform of the CCM in these elections. And the entertainment was to give them a chance to relax and unwind, to let them enjoy themselves, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Thank you. Mr. Amory, Dr. Douglas in the House of Assembly, National House of Assembly that is, accused you and Nevis administration of causing both St. Kitts and Nevis to be blacklisted sometime in connection to the offshore financial sector. Both you gentlemen, what have you to say in terms of that? And if you're elected to the National House once more, what would you do to ensure that Nevis gets benefits from it?
Didn't get the question?
I got the question about the blacklisted and get benefits. I think we've discussed already what we would like to represent as Nevis issues in the Assembly. We've talked about definitely things like police and fighting crime and social development and so on, education and health issues. The matter of blacklisting, I do believe that we've passed that stage, and Dr. Douglas's outburst was it to do with our resistance to their taking over the offshore industry in Nevis. And if the truth is to be known, the reason why Nevis, or one of the reasons we think Nevis was blacklisted or put on the list, was because we did not get information to clarify responses on the legislation and the offshore industry in Nevis, which came to the federal channels. And were we able to respond to those, we may still have been listed. But let me say in that regard, this blacklisting, quote unquote, is not just a Nevis issue. There were 30-something countries in the world which were on that list. And thank God, through the efforts of persons and working in collaboration with persons who are knowledgeable, we are off the list and we are back in business in offshore Nevis.
Mr. Daniel, any comment?
The trouble is that when the time, we have to so ensure that we function not to get on these kinds of lists, because the time and the energy and the effort and the money to get off and then to clear you, there's a stigma associated with that. Also, the caller mentioned about what I think I have said, that the matter of health and crime and constitutional reform would be my focus.
Good evening. Thank you for holding. You're on the air.
Yes, good evening. What I want to find is, right, why is it Mr. Amory supporting this secession thing so much? I want him to answer that question for me. And one more thing.
One question. Mr. Amory, go ahead.
I would like to see Nevis as an independent country, because the people of Nevis, in this arrangement, are in a situation which we are not certain what we are. Yes, people say we are independent already. That's not so, because we still have to refer matters through the federal government on foreign affairs and so on, and we miss a lot of opportunities as a Nevis island under this arrangement, which would significantly be enhanced if Nevis is independent. It is not that I'm seeking something personally. As I said just now, whomever is chosen to champion this cause in the future, I will support the issue of independence for Nevis, because I think it's the best thing for the people of Nevis to achieve their dignity, to achieve their full potential in the international and regional arena. And that is why I'm sure the opposition are saying that 113 will remain in the Constitution.
I will take one more final telephone call, and then I'll allow each candidate to give a closing comment for 2 minutes. This is our final telephone call. Good evening. Thank you for holding. You have 30 seconds.
Good evening. I would like to talk to the Premier, ask the question to the Premier. What provision will be made in the education system where classes have a large number of students with just one teacher, and also to the sixth form where over 40 students entered this year with a problem of space?
The issue of space at the sixth form will be addressed. We've had some slowness in responding to creating space, but I know already we are discussing with some contractors a quotation for providing additional space to ensure that the students at sixth form are not overcrowded. But we must remember, even though 40 students are entered, they are divided into at least 2 options per session, except for GP, which means a whole class or general paper or social development which is the entire class. So I don't know if the large class issue is a problem there. For the general school, the headmaster of the schools, whether it's a primary school or a high school, has the responsibility to indicate the reasonable size and whether or not they want more staff. It must come from that source. They're the ones who are managing the system. We provide and respond with the resources, whether it's teachers or financial resources or physical resources. And we're prepared to respond, as we've always done, to the demands of our heads who manage the system.
We'll have our closing comments, and I believe Mr. Amory started. Okay, Mr. Daniel, you'll have the opportunity. I'll indicate to you when the time is up. Yes. So you got 2 minutes starting now. Yes. Okay. Mr. Daniel.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share. I have to address a matter on the question of whether on leadership. I think in Nevis we have an enormous difficulty where we engage a lot in putting down each other. We engage a lot in self-doubt, so that the people of Nevis somehow often want to think of themselves as less than. Question was raised on some one of your programs about whether the candidates have the capacity to be prime minister, and I found that most distasteful, in the sense that I think Dr. Brown was here last night saying that was something. People do not become repositories of knowledge, and that leadership develops daily, not in a day. And I can speak for the members of the candidates in the Nevis Reformation Party. Leadership is what we do and what we exercise daily, and it doesn't happen, and people are not born leaders. It is nurtured and developed over time. I'm going to also ask the people of Nevis to give us an opportunity in these federal elections to bring about some new vistas, new thinking, and to engage our minds into some new modes of thought which can translate into real and meaningful change for the people of Nevis. I'm asking them on the 25th of October, Monday 25 October, to vote with us, the candidates are Miguel Mills, Patrice Nisbet, and Hensley Daniel. I believe that that we can bring that quality and level of representation to the federal process and bring about the kinds of changes that we need to see in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel. And Mr. Amory, your final closing comment, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Webbo, for the opportunity to share and discuss issues which are important to Nevis and to the people of Nevis. And I want to encourage all the people of Nevis to vote overwhelmingly in this election. I think the issues are too important for us to take lightly. We have 3 candidates for the CCM who have proven themselves to be productive and who are people persons who have given good leadership. You have Malcolm Gishard in Constituency 9, who has worked committedly and in a way which is sacrificial for the people of this constituency. And Jean Harris, who has given of herself to the people of this country totally. And there's myself. And I think in the 3 of us we have candidates who have proven to have managed the affairs of this country and who can give the type of representation which will make the people of Nevis proud and which can ensure that our concerns are addressed and that we continue to improve the quality of life in this country, both at the local level and the federal level. I can only ask the people to vote, to do the constitutionally correct thing, to take advantage of the privilege which has been won for us over the years, and to remove all doubt as to whether this is important. This is an important election, important in many respects. So I can only encourage you to go to vote and cast your vote for the CCM candidates. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Mr. Mr. Vance, the Premier of Nevis and leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement, candidate for the Concerned Citizens Movement representing St. George in the upcoming federal election on the 25th of October. And Hensley Daniel of the Nevis Reformation Party is a candidate for St. Paul's and St. John constituencies representing the Nevis Reformation Party in this upcoming election. Once again, we thank them very much for accepting our invitation and participating in this discussion. Thank you, our listeners, for being a part of the program as well. Don't forget to join us tomorrow evening at 8:30. We will start the program in here, the special edition at 8:30 instead of 8 o'clock, but we will be here. The heavyweights will be in, plus Washington Archibald, to give the final summary before the polling day on Monday. The facilitators for this program were the Nevis Island Administration Press and Public Relations Department, Caribbean Cable Communications Limited, the Caribbean's Powerhouse One Radio, Web Hosting and Developers Net KN Limited on St. Kitts, and Sharina White. The sponsors, Superfood Supermarket, SL Horsford and Company Limited, and Builders Paradise. Television production team, Huey Sargent, Spurgeon James, Malcolm Ramsey, and Stuart Jeffers, and what a spectacular job they did. The technical support and editorial assistance from Evan Hanley, Dellison Roper, Colin Archibald, and Desiree Otley. Executive producers of this program, Keith Scarborough and Alman Basin. Again, thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. This is Talk That Gets Results. We'll be back here on Friday evening at 8:30. You all have a very wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us.
From religion to politics, from sports to our cultural heritage. If it concerns the community, let's talk about it. It's not just talk. In-depth interviews,